Hello, New York Giants fans, and welcome to a new edition of the Valentine's Views podcast here on YouTube. Please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Your 1-3 Giants face the 3-1 Seattle Seahawks in Seattle on Sunday. The Giants looking for a much-needed upset victory. And here to help me break it down and discuss Sunday's matchup is Mookie Alexander of SB Nation's fantastic field goals site. Field goals. I butchered that one, didn't I? Fantastic Seattle Seahawks website, field goals. Whatever. Good enough. How you doing, Mookie? Thanks for coming on.
I'm doing well, Ed. And yes, it is Field Goals. It's the best site named Field Goals out there. Field Goals is the only site I know that's called Field Goals. But anyway, third year in a row between the Giants and the Seahawks. And
very, very
for
odd
Giants
considering
fans, time is the charm.
Yes, very, very, very odd considering the geographics and all of that they're playing 3 years in a row.
Yeah, but it's at least it's alternated because just got out of playing Detroit for the third season in a row. Here it's alternated. 2 years ago was in Seattle. Last year was in the Meadowlands. This year back in Seattle and on CBS too. I mean that's out of the television network habit, but
yeah, it's odd as long as it's on TV somewhere where I don't have to pay extra, you know.
Yep.
Then life is good. Hey, I wasn't going to start here, but you mentioned Seattle having played on Monday night, and they played on the road Monday against a good Detroit team and lost that game. But when I look at this game, if I'm looking for advantages on the Giants side, the Giants played on Thursday, and they've got that extra 3 or 4 days. Seattle on the short week. I kind of hate it when the NFL does this to teams, but how much of a disadvantage do you guys look at that as, and is that a worrisome thing, from the Seattle side?
Well, this is the second time now that the Seahawks are hosting a team that played on Thursday night because when they played Miami. Miami had just played the previous Thursday night. Now, of course, Tua got injured that Thursday night, so the rest factor didn't mean a whole lot because there's no amount of prep for Skylar Thompson that will make him ready to be an NFL quarterback or an NFL caliber starter. But in this instance, I'm more concerned. It's not about the rest that the Giants have. It's more about what Seattle has upcoming. So, as you mentioned, just played a Monday night road game. Now you're going to play a Sunday afternoon home game against the Giants. And then you've got a Thursday night home game against the 49ers. So that's 3 games in 10 days, not 3 games in 11 days. So there's probably going to be a little bit of, I won't call it like NBA style load management, but I'm curious to see how Mike Macdonald handles some of these injuries that the Seahawks are dealing with because the 49ers game is just objectively more important by the fact that it's a division game against the NFC West favorites and one of the favorites to win the whole conference. So it's not a case of taking the Giants lightly. It's more whether you could reverse the games or not. Like if it's playing the Niners Sunday and playing the Giants on Thursday or vice versa. It's about managing your health situation, knowing that you've got this very unwanted short week. And the first of 2 times they got to do this season. They got another Thursday night game day after Christmas. So be interested to see what Mike Macdonald does with the roster as a result.
So you're thinking that perhaps some of these, the questionable guys, some of the banged up guys, it might make sense to wait and play them on Thursday?
Yeah, it's possible. I think about Boye Mafe and the fact that he missed last week with a knee contusion. So he didn't practice in the walkthrough on Wednesday. I don't know whether he's practiced on Thursday, but it doesn't look like he has. So if he's out for Sunday, pretty good chance he would be around for Thursday. But I can see it where some guys are going to be held out of Sunday, or if they do play on Sunday, they might have some limited snap counts so that they're not going full throttle back from injury on Sunday and then into a Thursday game.
Why don't you, I noticed, in the Wednesday injury report that Seattle's injury list is pretty long. And also I think if I'm not mistaken, was it 4 starters who didn't play on Monday against the Lions? If you can just sort of go through the injuries that you're most concerned about, sort of heading into Sunday, because like I said, I know it's I know it's a long injury list for the Seahawks.
Yeah, it's a long injury list, and part of it feels like gamesmanship because there were a lot of players on the full participant side of the injury list. So, for example, last week, I think they had 19 players on the initial injury report for Thursday, because Thursday, Friday, Saturday is the pattern there for a Monday game. And then there are only 4 players on Saturday who actually had a game designation. So, pretty clear bit of fiddling with the injury report, but there are some legit injuries to do with. As you mentioned, 4 starters out on the Monday, and then you had another starter in the former Giant safety Julian Love. He got hurt in the middle of the Lions game, so his status is up in the air for Sunday. So the most important part for Seattle, the injuries I'm concerned about, would be quite literally the entire starting defensive line, or at least the defensive line that is the top rotation. So that would be Boye Mafe, who's been an outstanding pass rusher and an emerging standout against the run. You got Uchenna Nwosu, who hasn't played at all this season because of the MCL sprain suffered against the Cleveland Browns on an illegal chop block. And then Leonard Williams, another former Giants, and the rookie Byron Murphy II. Those are your 2 interior standouts. And Leonard Williams has been outstanding these first couple of games. He was second in quarterback hits at the time he got hurt with his rib injury. So I'm concerned about all of them missing because we saw what happened against the Lions and the results were not great. So the Giants offensive line, not as good as Detroit's, but from what I've seen from the Giants, much better than whatever that was last year. So that could be an advantage for the Giants if Seattle is again missing key players on the defensive line. And as we speak, just got the injury report. So Boye Mafe was a limited participant in an actual practice, no walkthrough today. And then you had Uchenna Nwosu practicing limited, Leonard Williams practicing limited, and Julian Love was a full participant. So the worry right now would be for Byron Murphy II, and it doesn't look like he's going to be able to play this week due to his hamstring injury. So that's still a loss. I mean, there's not great depth in the interior of this defensive line. So losing Murphy definitely stings because he's already commanding double teams at a pretty high rate.
So let me ask you about a couple of players that you've already mentioned, Leonard Williams and Julian Love, the 2 former Giants. How good have those guys been for Seattle? How important are they to that defense?
With Williams, he provides so much both as an interior pass rusher and also as a run defender. I think his interior pass rushing has been fantastic to start this season. Now, when Seattle acquired him in the trade last year, the defense just completely tanked, even with Williams in the lineup. But that wasn't because of Leonard Williams; it was because of other pieces around him. So even though he was productive, just the roster and the scheme was just a total busted flush. With Julian Love, I don't think he had a great first season in Seattle. Certainly some culpability in coverage busts and some missed tackles, but he got better as the season progressed.
Didn't he make the Pro Bowl?
Yes, he made the Pro Bowl, but so did Tyler Huntley a couple of years ago. But yeah, he Pro Bowl in the loosest sense. I don't think he necessarily had a Pro Bowl caliber year, but he got better as the season wore on. And keep in mind that he was the 3rd safety in effect behind Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs. Both of them are gone. So Love is the undisputed full-time starting safety alongside Rayshon Jenkins. And first game of the season, Love was fantastic against the Broncos, recorded an interception at the goal line on Bo Nix. He's been much better in coverage. He flies to the ball. He's been pretty solid with his tackling too. So yeah, when Love went out, I mean, that was a pretty big hit for Seattle's defense, given that they were already banged up. But if I had to weigh importance, I'd say Leonard Williams right now is a more important piece of what the Seahawks want to do, which is win up front. And Williams had been winning up front pretty consistently.
Yeah, I think Dexter Lawrence misses him.
Well, I'm just glad that Leonard Williams isn't on the other side because him and Dexter Lawrence against Seattle's guards would be a nightmare scenario for fans to watch.
Yeah, I understood. I think Giants fans understood the why of that trade, but Dexter Lawrence misses the guy because the Giants, that talent's hard to replace.
Mhm.
So I want to ask you, Seahawks are 3-1. And I mean, no offense meant, but those 3 victories are not necessarily impressive victories. You're talking about Denver, New England, and a Miami team without Tua Tagovailoa. I think the combined record of those teams is 4-8. Um, loss on Monday night to a really good Detroit team, gave up 42 points, which I suppose is understandable considering how much defense you guys had missing in that game. But I guess the question is, how would you assess the Seahawks really at the quarter pole? Are they as good as that 3-1 record would indicate? What are they?
What are they? I think they're a team that's good enough to make the playoffs, but probably not good enough to make any sort of deep playoff run. That there's still too many issues on the offensive line, which, as a Seahawks fan, I've been saying about this team for 15 years and more. I mean, ever since Steve Hutchinson left and Walter Jones retired, it has just been offensive line questions year after year after year. And they're still one of the worst in terms of pass blocking, and they haven't been great run blocking either. But they did have a pretty good game against the Lions. I'll give them that. Defensively, I know they weren't as good as those first 3 games indicated. They got to play either bad quarterbacks or bad offenses, or just and teams without good receivers and a bad quarterback. So I think that Lions game would have been tough even if the starting lineup was available, because Williams and Mafe and Murphy all played when they gave up 180 yards rushing to the Patriots. So there are still issues with the run defense that concern me, whether it's starters or not. And even some of the reserves that were playing on Monday, it's not like they're practice squad level players. Draymond Jones is making $17 million a year, and Jaron Reed is kind of a starter because he gets the starting tag over Murphy, and he plays 40 snaps a game. So the defensive line issues were in full display in terms of the depth, but I think that the Seahawks will average out to being an above average defense as the season progresses. We'll find out more over the next several weeks, because you got the Giants, you got the Niners, and then, of course, you've got Buffalo also on the horizon very soon. The passing offense right now, I think, is the strength of the Seahawks. Geno Smith leading the league in passing yards, which, if you were to tell a Jets fan that in 2014, they would have slapped you across the face. They're thinking, no way that could happen. But Geno's
Well,
been
I
fantastic.
think 2017 Giants fans would have the same reaction.
Yeah, probably so. Ben McAdoo vindicated, I guess. But for Geno, he's been fantastic, even though he's had to deal with a lot of pressure in his face. Now, the 4 touchdowns and 4 interceptions, that's one of those things where TD interception ratio can be a bit misleading, because he's had a couple of passes that have been just short of the end zone, down at the 1-yard line. We saw that in Detroit twice. And then he had 2 tip ball interceptions as well. That, of course, that's kind of luck of the draw. But this is the best start to his career by far. He has been excellent at avoiding sacks, given how many pressures he's facing behind that offensive line. And the trio of DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Tyler Lockett, they have been as good as advertised in different ways. So if the passing offense can hold up and the blocking can just be marginally improved, such that Kenneth Walker has more rushing holes and Zach Charbonnet can do some more damage, then the offense can really balance out to be something of a thorn in the side for most opposing defenses. And that's what's thrilled me the most, is that the offense, even with some of the mistakes, some of the penalties they committed, when they're not committing mistakes, they are moving the ball at a much more consistent rate, it feels like, than we've seen for some more recent Seahawks teams, at least under Geno.
Mookie, I'm always curious how, folks from the other side feel about the Giants. Giants are 1-3, made the playoffs in 2022. They fell back to 6-11 a year ago. Is this a game that Seattle fans look at and just put that in the win column and move on? Or is this a Giants team that you worry about coming into Sunday?
If Neighbors is not going to play, and the fact that he didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday tells me that he's probably too concussed, or he's not going to pass protocol to play Sunday. The offense of the Giants just doesn't really frighten me in that case, because Neighbors looks like a special talent, and the Giants once again have found a fantastic receiver out of LSU. But Wan'Dale Robinson, I've liked Wan'Dale since college, but as a number one option at receiver, there's just too big a drop off after that to Slayton, and then just other guys who don't see the ball very often. So between that loss and Daniel Jones kind of being Daniel Jones, and him not being able to push the ball downfield accurately beyond 20 yards, that's an area where I feel like Seattle should have the edge defensively. Now, the Giants' defense is a little bit of a different story because of their strengths. Don't know how well Brian Burns has played, but Dexter Lawrence, to me, is just a premier defensive tackle, and Seattle's offensive line has struggled the most on the interior, and he could cause some major disruption to the Seahawks offense. Looks like the Giants defense, I mean, they wrecked Cleveland with Deshaun Watson getting sacked 8 times. They did pretty well to hold the Cowboys out of the end zone in the second half. So they kept them in the game for the most part. It's just the Giants didn't get touchdowns. So yes, I expect the Seahawks to beat the Giants, but I'm not going to be the cocky guy says, yeah, this should be a blowout or anything like that. The Giants, to me, are at least competitive enough that they're not going to roll over against any old team. So while I don't really think highly of Daniel Jones as a quarterback, I do respect enough of the defense to make things pretty interesting. And also, if the run defense is going to continue to have a little bit of difficulty, Devin Singletary, if he does play, he could have some good moments and alleviate some of the pressure off of Jones, such that they can sustain some drives here and there.
You know, one guy on Seattle's roster that Giants fans look at these days, and everybody loves hindsight. Everybody loves to pick on on decisions and say, "Oh, we should have drafted that guy instead of this guy." How good a player is Charles Cross, and how happy are you guys that the Giants left him on the board a couple of years ago?
Well, the Giants took Evan Neal, correct?
Yes.
And it looks like, I guess not every Alabama offensive lineman is a future All-Pro. But with Charles Cross, it was almost a surprise that he got picked, because we've seen the Seahawks just skip out on offensive line so often in the higher end of the draft. But the first year, he looked very good for a rookie. Second year, a bit of a down year, and he started out with a week 1 injury that put him on IR for a few weeks. So he had some inconsistent moments throughout the rest of that season. But throughout training camp, there was a lot of hype about how well he'd been playing and how well he'd been performing against the Seattle defense. I got to go up to one of the training camps and observe in person, and he really looked like the real deal and about to make that third-year leap, because it is common for offensive linemen to take a little bit longer to progress to their potential. And so far, he has been by far Seattle's best offensive lineman. First couple of weeks of the season, did not give up a pressure, gave up a sack and a pressure against Miami, but he held his own against Aiden Hutchinson for the well. Now, PFF gave him like 12 pressures allowed or something like that, but no sacks allowed to my knowledge. And when you have 60 dropbacks, you're going to allow pressures. So that's just a numbers game, more or less. But Cross as a run blocker, I mean, when Seattle runs the left side, Cross is moving out in space and pushing people back. He's showcasing good strength against some top pass rushers and keeping a good base. So, yeah, Charles Cross could be one of the rare times the Seahawks have hit a home run, so to speak, in terms of drafting an offensive lineman. So I think fans are pretty content with how Cross is performing right now. And if that upward trajectory continues, Seattle has almost never extended a contract of an offensive lineman they've drafted under John Schneider. Cross has easily the best chance to end that drought.
Maybe I shouldn't have asked you that, because I think all of that is just going to make Giants fans mad.
I mean, you still got Andrew Thomas, and Andrew Thomas has been looking really good. But yeah, Charles Cross, I don't get to praise Seahawks offensive linemen very often, but Cross looks like he is making that leap into what Seahawks fans hoped he would become when he was a rookie out of Mississippi State.
All right. Hey, last thing for you. I'm not going to ask you for a prediction. I know you would pick Seattle, obviously. And maybe we've already talked about it a little bit, but if there's a path for the Giants to pull an upset here on on Sunday, and I think the line the last time I saw it is 6.5 points in favor of Seattle. If there's a path for the Giants to win this game, um, what does it most likely look like?
Probably forcing some turnovers, which Seattle in the early part of the season, they've got a -3 turnover differential. They had 3 takeaways on the defensive side of the ball against Denver, and that's it. They haven't
Mhm.
forced a turnover the last 3 weeks, and then they committed 2 turnovers against Denver, including a muff punt at their own 10-yard line. And then the last 2 weeks, you've had Geno Smith get picked off twice, and then you had the Metcalf fumble and Geno getting picked kind of in pseudo garbage time. So 6 turnovers in 4 games. Obviously, Mike McDonald isn't going to be happy about that. Um, they have been prone to drive killing penalties and very bad field position. So those are the chances for the Giants pass rushers to pin their ears back and go after Smith near his own goal line, because the Seahawks have had trouble getting out of their own way when
Mhm.
they're inside the 10. So if you could do that, I mean, that's one path. I'd say special teams. Certainly the kicker position has been an adventure for the Giants, but in terms of the coverage unit, Seattle hasn't been great in terms of covering punts and kicks so far. And if the Giants can get anything going in the return game, that would also be critical. But I think the Giants' path to victory is probably going to be on the defensive side of the ball. If they can confuse the Seahawks, have some creative blitzes with Shane Bowen and what he can do against that Ryan Grubb offense. Be interested to see what the Giants secondary does against Seattle's receivers. Um, and I think Seahawks fans are also going to be looking closely at Tyler Nubin, the rookie safety, because that's who the Giants picked with the Leonard Williams second rounder that was sent. So that's a matchup I'm most interested in, because if the Giants secondary can kind of outperform expectations, then this becomes a much more interesting matchup for the Giants to spring a surprise. It's the NFL. There are no guarantees, and I'm pretty sure that most of you are watching this. You are already out of your Survivor League.
Yeah, most likely. I don't do the survivor stuff, but yeah, it's that's probably a good bet. Anyway, Mookie, I appreciate the time. Folks, check out fieldgoals.com if you guys want the Seattle perspective on Sunday's game. And as always, thank you for watching. Please stay safe out there. Take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.